Now, this week, there is definitely more news that I'm going to be talking about in the news of the week than I have done in the past couple of months since we're in this pandemic. And a lot of that has to do, we had some transfer rumors and also some transfer that has been confirmed and also a loan deal that was extended. But first of all, before we get to that, let us actually do what we usually do whenever we do a News of the Week video, which is talk about news that's related to the coronavirus pandemic. And the first news we're going to be talking about is that there is report, and I want to quote report on this because this is going to be one of those news topics that's going to spark a lot of controversy. There is reports suggest more than half of the employees at MCO, which is Orlando International Airport, has tested positive for COVID-19. Though there are some sources saying that data is inaccurate. So basically what they originally report is that they tested 500 employees at that international airport, and it turns out 260 of the 500 employee actually was tested positive with COVID-19. Now, there are other sources are saying, no, that is actually incorrect. The real number is actually 2 out of 500. And when our governor, Ron DeSantis, basically talked about this, he mistakenly saying 260. And what he actually meant was there's actually only 2 employees that was tested positive for this COVID-19 instead of the other 260 that some sources are report. By the way, this is the thing about data, and I've seen this many times throughout this pandemic, and this is why I always say, when you look at these data, you got to take it in terms of a grain of salt, because some of these data could be very inaccurate, and the numbers could definitely be wrong, and that the only thing I will kind of also say is, when you look at this data, do at your own wishes, but just to know that some of those data could be a little bit inaccurate, and if you're going to use data to prove your evidence of why exactly this tournament probably is not going to happen, or why do you think that whoever your governor or city official are not doing a great job in terms of reopening because of the data, then that's not really an accurate kind of evidence. Consider the data, just like some of the news stories that we have heard, has been very inaccurate, and there's been just some crazy kind of rumors that is surrounded. So, yeah, when I look at this data, do I think this is going to really affect the MLSisback tournament? Maybe, but I will also think that maybe that if MLS sees this, they probably think, well, you know what, we might as well just let all the team just charter to Orlando, which I think that's what most of the teams are going to do. And we're not going to charter our team into Orlando International Airport, but instead go to the other airport, which is Orlando Executive. That's where most of the charter flights usually go to land whenever they want to charter players or any celebrities to go to Orlando in the first place. So, yeah, I don't know if this is going to affect the tournament. And overall, I have heard cases that Florida has been increased in terms of this COVID-19 thing. I'm not quite sure whether or not if that's going to change the MLSisback tournament. But as we continue the countdown for this MLSisback tournament in Orlando, unless if there's any word saying that they could either push back or either cancel this tournament because of what's going on in Florida, and with this COVID-19 cases once again started to spike up again, we'll see how that's going to go. Now, there is a DC United player that was tested positive for coronavirus. DC United did not release the name of that player, and if that is the case, that's going to be the second MLS player to be tested for coronavirus or tested positive for coronavirus after the Union in the beginning of this whole pandemic and when the season was paused also said that they had a player that was tested positive, or actually they said there was an employee that was tested positive, but we later find out it was Castor Shabilko that was the one that got tested for positive. And the good news is he actually recovered in around 2 weeks. So whoever that player is for DC United, I hope he is in quarantine right now, and wish him the best and wish him a speedy recovery. But yeah, so far there hasn't been as a lot of players that has infected with this with this virus yet, but there also is now question saying that, well, with this tournament that is going on, and you notice when they announced this tournament, they didn't really give, like, when I talk about the detail of how this tournament goes, notice how I didn't really mention the fact that there is no protocol in terms of how the testing is going to go. I mean, they said that there's going to be a lot of testing that is going to happen. It's going to happen in each of the game, but how in the world is that going to work? And what happened if there is a player that got tested positive for this coronavirus? Does that mean that the whole team had to go under quarantine and that player will not be available anymore for the tournament because of that? I don't know how that's going to work, and I think we're just going to get more information about that as the tournament is about to start in a couple of weeks. Now, moving on from the news that is related to the coronavirus, to talk about transfer rumors that has happened, because as I said, we had some transfer rumor that has happened, and we did have a couple of signings that was made. One of those rumor was Nashville remain in negotiation with PSV on Maxi Romero, with reports say that they will pay $1.5 million fee of loan. I forgot to put the word loan there. But they also have an option to buy fee set at 8 figure. Now, if Nashville is going to potentially get Maxi Romero, who they were rumored to potentially get him last week, they're going to have to pay $1.5 million, which is going to be right up there in terms of classifying him as a designated player, which is not a bad thing because Nashville does have 2 more DP spots to burn, and this would not be a bad spot to burn a DP, considered they absolutely need a guy that is a goal scorer. The option to buy fee is definitely a little bit high at 8 figures, and that kind of fee might be because PSV has a history when they decide to sell players, they want to ask a big amount of money if teams want to buy him after they decide to loan him. So we shall see, if he does well with Nashville, whether or not they're going to commit to buy him outright for an 8-figure fee. But the bottom line is, if I'm Nashville, I would do it, considering this is a team that, as I said before, they have a very good defense. They have a pretty solid midfield. The only thing that is missing from this team to make this team definitely a competitive team in MLS is a goal scorer. And as long as if you don't have a goal scorer in MLS, or even in any league that Nashville might be finding itself in, they're not going to win a lot of games if you're going to not have a guy that's going to score goals for you. And hopefully they realize that, and maybe potentially getting Maxi Romero might be the guy that will bang in the goals for them. Now, it's time to once again talk about another crazy rumor coming out of Inter Miami, because, I know for the past couple of months, the rumors of all these big names, European superstar player potentially going to Inter Miami has died down. But this week, that kind of event started to come back again, because now we have Sergio Ramos saying that he wants to play in Miami after the 2022 World Cup. And this is another example of another player that basically saying that he wants to play with David Beckham after he basically is done with his playing career in Europe, and that he can potentially join that team in a couple of years. And the reason why a lot of people look at this and they always laugh at this, because a lot of things can change in a couple of years. And we've seen how Inter Miami is basically linked with everybody. And so far, there's only like 1 or 2 players that they've been linked with so many ever since they become an MLS team in this year that they have actually signed it. So, yeah, I don't know if Sergio Ramos is going to join Inter Miami. And keep in mind, if he does join Inter Miami after the 2022 World Cup, he will be 37 years old. And I know Sergio Ramos is considered one of, if not the best center back in the world, but consider he's 37 and he's going to be playing at Inter Miami. Do you think Inter Miami would really want to like spend big amount of money? Presumably, I hope they won't spend designated player money on Sergio Ramos, because if that's the case, that is a huge mistake, considering you never want to spend DP amount of money on a defender, and especially one that is way out of his prime. So we shall see whether or not in a couple of years this is going to be the case, or is this just going to be one of those crazy rumor, and one of those many rumors that Inter Miami is linking with a European superstar player, only for a couple of days later that is not going to be the case. Now, we had a couple of former MLS players that is thinking of potentially coming back to MLS after finishing their playing career in Europe, and one of those players is former U.S. men's national team veteran Fabien Johnson, who of course is now out of contract at Borussia Mönchengladbach, and that he is actually now seeking a potential TAM move with multiple teams in MLS. Eric Lehigh is another one that is also now going to be a free agent after Hull City decide not to renew his contract, although he hasn't really said that he's thinking of coming back to MLS and potentially play with a couple of clubs. Now, starting with the Fabien Johnson one, obviously, I think there is definitely a reason why a lot of teams want to get him, especially he said that he wants a TAM deal, which I think that would be an absolute steal, consider he is a guy that, he pretty much has done it all when he is in Europe, playing with Mönchengladbach and playing in some of the biggest stage game like the Champions League, and the fact that they can still, some of these clubs can get him, consider he's only like 33 years old, which is right near the end of his career, but he still is definitely a guy that, if you can get him off of a TAM move, that would just be an absolute steal, and that some people might even think that he's not even a TAM kind of player. He should be like a DP kind of player. So it's no wonder why multiple team is trying to chase him, although obviously the team that is potentially going to get first dibs of getting Fabien Johnson is going to be Inter Miami, because they are at the top of the allocation order, and I won't be surprised if Inter Miami are thinking of trying to get him, because it's going to be another creative player that they could of course use to improve that attack. But we shall see whether or not if other teams are going to try to maybe trying to call Inter Miami or call some of those teams that is near the top of the allocation order and basically ask them if they want to trade some of those sweet TAM money in order for us to climb that allocation order to get Fabien Johnson. And the same goes with Eric Lehigh, and I won't be surprised if the Chicago Fire is going to be one of those, because I have heard people saying that the Fire are the one that potentially is going to get Eric Lehigh, which makes sense. He came out of, I think he used to be in the Chicago Fire Academy, and that it would make sense the Fire would eventually get him back and that kind of complete a full circle in his career. And considering the Fire desperately need help in terms of defense, Eric Lehigh will definitely be a guy that could definitely help their team. Although I will say this, he, as well as Fabien Johnson has a history of injury issues, and that they do have a issue of trying to stay healthy. So that's some of the things that these teams might consider if they want to potentially sign him, where, it's a good signing, but it's also could be a little bit risky, because if they're so injury prone and they aren't able to get on the pitch for most of the time, you basically just wasted a lot of money to try to potentially get them. Now, one signing that has now been official, and this has been official for a couple of weeks now, is Franco Jara, who, of course, I said it's been official a couple of weeks ago. It's actually been official a couple of days ago, and in a couple of weeks there was a lot of question whether or not if FC Dallas eventually is going to get Franco Jara. That is part of that deal that he would join Dallas in the summer after he finished the Clausura season with Pachuca. Well, obviously now that we know that the Clausura season is not a thing anymore in Liga MX, I think Pachuca just basically say, well, you know what, you can have him FC Dallas, since since now the season is over, there's really no point of us kind of just try to keep him until, like, if the Clausura season is going to extend it, and then of course they can have him. So yeah, Franco Jara is now officially an FC Dallas player, and he is training with FC Dallas and set to play in the MLSisback tournament. I'm not quite sure whether or not if he's going to be a starter. There should be a big competition between him and the Cobra in terms of that striker role. And I won't be surprised if he is a guy that, even if he doesn't get starting minutes, he would actually come off the bench. And this would be a guy that you would definitely want to come off the bench. And You know, also as a fan of one of the team that is in Group B, which is the San Jose Earthquakes, this is definitely a sign that, yeah, I'm a little bit nervous about this because FC Dallas is one of those teams that I said before last week when the draw was reviewed could be a huge contention for that second spot, and we might be fighting them and the Whitecaps potentially for that second spot. And now the fact that FC Dallas has that, maybe now has that advantage with getting Jara, and that they have two definitely good striker going forward. This could definitely swing the advantage of them to potentially get that second spot, and that the Quakes might actually not be able to get that spot. But we shall see how that is going to go, and whether or not if he's going to, do well with Dallas. I mean, keep in mind, just like many players around the league, Jara is one of those guys that hasn't been playing for a very long time, so rust is definitely going to be an issue, and that, yes, he is now training with FC Dallas, but I'm assuming he's not going to be 100% fit, knowing the fact that he hasn't played for Pachuca for a very, very long time. Andy Naha also officially signed with LAFC. They just announced it yesterday, although last week I kind of said that it was going to happen because of the fact that there was already a lot of report that this deal was going to be very close from completing, and today, or at least yesterday, it was basically officially announced that he has joined with LAFC. Now, Montreal has also extended Lassi Leppänen loan till the end of the season. Originally, this loan, I think, was going to be end in the summer, but I think Bologna, knowing the fact that they probably see what's going on in MLS, and knowing the fact that they want to, since Montreal and Bologna have a very good relationship with each other, and that there tends to be a lot of players that the Impact has got from the past couple of years off of loan are actually coming from Bologna. So that's why I think, just as a courtesy, they decided to just let Montreal to extend his loan to the end of the season, and we shall see whether or not if Impact, once the end of the season is going to happen, whether or not if they are actually going to get Lassi Leppänen outright. I mean, Leppänen, he came into the league with a bang, scoring a brace, but he's been kind of inconsistent in some of these games, so we shall see whether or not if that inconsistency will prove that Montreal maybe not think about buying him outright, and that he could be walk out of the Impact after the end of this season of this loan, but we shall see how that's going to go. Kevin Durant brought 5% stake at the Philadelphia Union and become the second NBA superstar player to buy a minority stake at an MLS team, after James Harden did that. I think last year he did it with the Houston Dynamo, and there's a lot of people that question why exactly Durant decided to buy a minority stake with the Union. I think maybe the reason why he's wanted to get a minority stake is that he's always been rumored to potentially buy a minority stake with an MLS team, and that it kind of makes sense, the fact that he decided to buy a minority stake of a team that has a logo of a snake, because apparently a lot of people think that that's what happened to him during his NBA playing career. But yeah, it's kind of interesting thing how that is the case, all kidding aside. And I have heard a rumor that he originally was going to buy potentially a minor stake with DC United, since he of course is from the DC area, but DC United basically said no, and he of course decided to do the next best thing, which is contact another team that is near where DC United play, which is the Union, and the Union basically said yes, and now he, of course, get a minority stake at that. And with that being said, I won't be surprised if I'm going to see other MLB superstar player or any other athletes or famous people that is going to buy minority stake of an MLS club, because it seemed like these kind of celebrities and these athletes, knowing that MLS is a league that is growing, it would be smart now, the fact that they decided to buy some investment of these teams, so that they, of course, can earn some big profit out of that. And finally, last but not least, in this news of the week, Harry Shipp, of course, announced his retirement from professional soccer think, on Monday. And this kind of came with a little bit of a surprise because, you know, he's only 28. And he is a guy that is not a flashy player, but he is very beloved in the Sounder fan base. And a guy that, you know, if you call upon him to play for your team, you know he is going to be a very hard-working player and get the job done. But I guess the reason why he might decide to announce his retirement now is that he doesn't want to go back to playing during this tournament and potentially will get this virus. And then he's also now working his MBA and potentially actually hold a managerial role, whether it's with the Sounders or another MLS team. And you know, if that's the case, then that's good for him, and that he certainly is a guy that has a very good career in MLS, and that I wish him the best in terms of what he's going to do and whether or not eventually he's going to get a managerial role in the higher rank with an MLS team in the future. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for the news of the week. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all these news, and have I missed any other news that I didn't mention on the board? But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I, of course, will see you guys next time.